What's going on, everybody? My name is Greg Peters. You are watching the Car Passion channel, and today I'm going to be buttoning up the bottom of my engine. Now that's going to include installing the rear main seal, oil pump, main bearing support plate, and oil pan, as well as providing you guys with the usual tips and tricks you might need if you're doing this at home on your own. What do you say we get started? First up, I'm going to be installing my oil pump. In my case, it's a Boundary Engineering with forged gears, virtually indestructible. This is a highly recommended upgrade as you get closer to 300 horsepower and beyond. And mine is also a stage 2, which has the housing internally machined out to flow more oil. That is recommended if you have multiple oil-fed things on your engine, such as a turbo and VVT, and if you're running an oil cooler or anything else that relies on oil pressure. It's a really good upgrade to have. After you make sure that all of your mating surfaces are ridiculously clean, you'll lay down some oil-resistant silicone sealer. Now I put a little bit of assembly lube on the crank nose to help the front main seal slide over it, which is already installed in the oil pump. You don't want this seal to fold like this as you try to slip it over the crankshaft, because what can happen is if you fold this lip as you're putting it on the crank, even if it pops back into place, this little spring can come out, and you don't want that to come out because that's what keeps tension on your front main seal and stops it from leaking oil. Just put it over that crank nose nice and slow. Now you just gotta torque it down. Now of course you've pulled the bolts from your labeled bag, which tell you which hole each bolt goes into. We've got 3 different sizes, and if you're coming back to this months later like I am, you might not remember which bolts go into which holes. But your rear main seal plate is pretty much the same procedure. I've already installed the seal itself. Pretty much just get it started by hand, putting it into this carrier, and then I put it face down on a microfiber rag, and I use a mallet and evenly tap on the back of this thing until it's perfectly flush. You want the seal to sit in there nice and flat. I've also already siliconed it up so it's ready for install. Now, the 01 and newer Miatas came with this awesome thing called a main bearing support plate, and it actually bolts to the mains and helps keep them aligned during high revving and high horsepower situations. But the problem now that I've run into is the main bearing support plate does not clear the ARP main studs. It just kind of rocks around like that. So you have to perform a little modification to your main bearing support plate if you want to continue using it with ARP main studs. You can see the problem here. This is where the support plate bolts to the main and the stud here sticks up higher. So the plate just contacts this first, but it's no big deal. I'll just have to drill a couple holes in the plate to clear all of the mains. So I'm just gonna measure this distance right here, and then I'll mark up my support plate, drill a few holes. You can see now it's actually sitting flush against the block. It's just a couple there, a couple down there, a couple right there, and then at the back I just cut out a couple notches to clear those bad boys. And this thing's still going to be fully functional. And a lot of people say, oh, why don't you just run an early style baffle, which doesn't connect the mains at all, it's just a baffle. And to me, just cutting out a couple notches and making this support plate work is so much better. Now, before I can put everything back together, I've also got to drill and tap my pan for the turbo return, and I'm going to do an oil temperature sensor as well. This fitting here is just 3/8 NPT on one side and a 10 AN on the other, and that's going to be my return line size. The return comes from the center of the turbo right here, and I'm just going to plumb this in right about there. One thing you do have to remember is the oil return from the turbo has to be tapped in above the oil level in the pan. Now that's probably somewhere around here. It pretty much all sits in this big part of the pan. So if you're tapping, you know, anywhere up here, you're gonna be okay with that. Now the oil temperature sensor, you want to be submerged in oil all the time, even when the car is running. So I'm gonna be tapping that somewhere down here, and I'll be using a 1/8 NPT tap for that. That's pretty much just the common sensor size. Before you drop this on, you also want to make sure that all of the mating surfaces are very, very clean, and that includes the block itself also. You're going to lay down some thread sealer on the block, and I'm also going to drop in my half circle pan seals. This gasket right here, arguably one of the most important gaskets in the entire engine, because if you forget it, you could lose suction between your oil pump and your oil pickup. Now, you don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on a fancy high volume oil pump just to lose oil volume because you forgot to put this gasket in. Now the bolts and the nut that hold down the oil pickup tube only get torqued down to a mere 8 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna be safe and put a little bit of Loctite on everything. So the bottom of the engine is all sealed up, and I'm getting really excited now because we don't have that much more to go. I mean, what? Water pump, timing belt, valve cover, VVT line, turbo lines, clutch, flywheel. Okay, all right, we got quite a few things to go, but I'm still getting excited because from here on out, it's all things I've done before. So it's like I almost know what I'm doing. Anyways, I hope you learned something from this video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.
Back from the dead.